Test. Oh, yeah, that looks like I'm good. Okay. I'm Phil Wyman, and this is the Wild Theology Podcast, where the world, the humans in it, and God are all wilder than we've been told.
That's your intro.
So, you'll get philosophy and theology and crazy stories that come from 30 years of pastoring,
Boring.
20 years of festival work,
Whatever.
and the mud and blood of wrestling with the living in the spaces angels fear to tread.
Trying to sound interesting, are we? Yeah, you think you got something to say?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem, dimwit.
Like I'm a lot smarter than you think.
Yeah, you tightened your shoes this morning.
Whatever. We're Phil Wyman, and this is Wild Theology, where you get to argue with your own ideas.
And lose.
That's the point. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Phil Wyman.
Okay, so Wild Theology Podcast continues with the second one with Jim Hogue. Yeah, it's him again. And I've been doing some political intersection of theology and politics, and so there was discussion with somebody who kind of looked outside the whole voting for Trump, voting for Hillary. There's Trump supporter, and now, Jim, you're not a Trump supporter? No. He's not a Trump supporter.
Nope.
No. And in 2016, who'd you vote for?
Voted for Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
Okay, to be honest, I stifled the gag reflex and voted for Hillary Clinton. Because
I didn't stifle the gag influence. I just didn't vote for Hillary, but I didn't vote for Trump. I'm that guy in between who said, I don't like any of this.
Yeah, and you're probably responsible for Trump getting into office because you didn't vote.
In Massachusetts, you kidding?
Yeah, now you got a point there.
Yeah, I mean, they voted for Hillary anyway, so it's like, it's not like I had any influence over this.
No.
I wasn't going to play that game,
She
you know?
won Mass, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't going to play that game anyway.
Well,
I'm just tired of the whole two-party system, and they're playing games on me on both sides.
Exactly.
I don't care who gets in. It's always the same.
Bring back the free land and whiskey party.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. We got a great platform.
What? Oh, man, okay.
Oh, wait, future podcast. Anyway, so, yeah, well, okay. He was voting in Massachusetts. I was voting in California. Yeah, it was pretty much Hillary carried.
Yeah.
I didn't vote for Hillary because I wanted her. In fact,
Right.
I don't like her, and I think she was tone deaf, completely unqualified, and corrupt. To be honest, but I knew.
Why don't you?
Oh yeah.
Could you please tell me what you really think?
I know I tend to beat around the bush, don't I?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty hard hitting words.
Yeah, but we got a threshold of profanity here that we don't want to hit. So
Okay, yeah, okay.
So that being said, watch your pink little ears. We might do something, but it came down to basically the lesser of two evils. The thing we always get, and the problem is, I noticed that no matter which side you're on, you're always trying to win everything in one fell swoop. They want a home run every time.
Right.
That politics don't work that way.
Right.
You compromise and you move forward. Compromise and move forward, or
Right.
everything's sliding backwards and you try not to let it slide back too far.
Right.
And the thing is, I was aware of Hillary and what she was doing, but I was definitely aware of Trump. Practically all my life I've heard about Trump.
Right.
And
That's true.
and I believe that man was singularly unqualified to be president. And the guy proves this every single day. Now he's been impeached, and unfortunately, we've lost a lot of ground. A lot of constitutional law has been violated.
Right.
Separation of powers has been violated. Career diplomats in the State Department, which is a department that Trump is supposed to work through, has been bypassed with his cronies going to try to get political favors out of foreign governments.
Right.
Strong-arming them by actually withholding funding that is our tax money and voted on in Congress. So basically breaking or amending the will of the people for personal favors in an election campaign in the United States, which is, again, even personal favors on a foreign for foreign policy is one thing, but personal favors to interfere with an American campaign using a foreign government, I'm sorry, that's an impeachable offense. And it's a violation of his office, it's a violation of the Constitution, it's a violation of the separation of powers, and a violation of the powers of Congress.
Okay, so there's no disagreement you're getting with me.
I understand.
On those
I don't know who that is.
But, right.
Who's that guy?
I don't know. He's
have
trouble.
no idea.
Yeah. Yet, on the other hand, if we're going to look at this from the perspective of being Christians and standing up for things that Christianity,
do I have to?
You got to stand up for something. If what's it? If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. So,
I like another one that says if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu.
Been there, done that. So,
yeah, he speaks truth, and me too.
yeah. So, but if your Christianity should be showing itself to the world, it should also be showing itself in your politics, correct? So if you have two-party, we're looking at these two-party platforms. We've got Republican, Democrat, and one of them is, if we're going to take one of the big issues that a lot of people jumped on, is the pro-life versus the pro-choice issue. And so there are a number of people, a friend of mine that I just spoke with this week in Van Nuys, who he makes a statement that, this is one of the biggest issues for me. There were a lot of other things he agreed with about Trump, but he also looks at Trump as a narcissist and lying at times. But he said, boy, if I got the lesser of two evils, I'm going to pick somebody who's going to stand up for the life of the unborn child, because in his eyes, he looked at that as a Holocaust in our lifetime. Yeah. When we're talking 40+ million unborn children, innocents, who have lost lives, except for no reason, but oftentimes it's convenience, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are points at which maybe we there's other discussions around that as a whole, but you ended up voting the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. I did.
Why?
Because, and we take abortion in full account. The problem is, single issue voting, especially when you're not really taking the entire package together, like considering the candidate and the party,
right,
and party behavior and candidate behavior, and the idea of not taking constitutional issues, which we had really good reason to know that Trump was going to be just hell in the Constitution. He's even said the Constitution is in his way. The problem is, what we do is we burn down the barn to save a horse, or we burn down the barn to save the farm. And the problem is, I don't believe that you can win abortion on a Supreme Court justice ruling.
Right.
What will happen is abortion will continue. It'll just go back where it was before, and women will be getting killed. And that doesn't deter anybody.
Right.
It's like an issue in Ramona we have here where there are people who oppose Highway 67 being modernized and re-engineered to fit the flow of people we have now. Their idea is, well, people will die on the road and it'll discourage them.
Right.
What's wrong with that picture? See, if as a again, when evangelical issues come up, it's the only time that we step out of our bubble and get involved in something, and it is basically to try to enforce Christian values on a non-Christian society.
Yeah.
And that's not evangelism, that is tyranny. that is essentially what we're doing. Is we're siding our mission and trying to control politics, or enforce Christian values based on politics and law.
Right.
And I can see the justification, but I also see the application, and it puts us in a point where we can do neither, because we are outnumbered, folks. We are not the majority, and now.
So what are we? 25% of the population? Is that about what it is?
I'm not sure right now, because we're having churches.
There's even a question of defining that, of course, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take a second to see if I can.
I notice I'm getting darker the longer this podcast is going on.
Yeah. Let me.
Yeah, we still got blue.
Okay, so I did a little.
It's going to be black up there pretty soon.
Yeah. So I did a little adjustment there of the video to make it so Jim didn't disappear into the black.
We're going to see how well this
for those of you who are so for those of you who are really conservative, you thought he was going black anyway, but we're now. We are. We're doing this. We're having a podcast. Oh, okay. Well, no, we're fine to let things interrupt. Mm-hmm. The fun is the interruptions. You want to come say hi?
We're smoking.
No, Linda doesn't want to say hi.
We're smoking ribs around the corner. Right.
Okay. And Jim is going to have to check the temperature every now and then.
Yeah.
We're being
might even
alerted.
Get up right in the middle of this video.
That's right.
In fact, a question I can't answer, I'll have to go check the temperature.
That's...
Yeah. It's just
so if Jim checks the temperature, you know I got him. Mm-hmm. All right.
Oh, crap. I got to change the temperature.
Okay. So you're looking at this abortion issue as the way people are trying to do it with the president putting in Supreme Court justices who make a decision. You don't think that's actually going to solve the problem, that it needs to be a state-by-state kind of thing?
Probably. And it's going to have to be, let's face it, the evangelical movement is not the majority in this country, and it's actually shrinking. Mm-hmm. The thing is that we have another mission that is not to control people's behavior, but to make disciples, to be the expression of Christ in this country, in our communities, and to be constantly engaged in battles that end up in horrific political outcomes, and our names are plastered all over it. I've had to actually distance myself from what certain evangelical leaders do and say, because it is not biblical. It is also basically, here's a word for you. Go look this up. Hegemony. That's what we're trying to do. We don't care what kind of a person we put in office, as long as he pushes our values.
Right. And so in light of that, one of the great concerns I have, and the thing that I keep going back to in the Wild Theology Podcast, is the polarization. Yeah. The radically growing polarization within America. It's religious, it's political, it's all of that. By choosing this opposite of Trump, who is a radical polarizer. I mean, we've seen polarization exponentially increase under Trump, I think. And
saw that coming.
Right, and I, some of the Trump supporters I've spoken with have agreed with that, and it's one of the things they disagree is his dialogue creates this polarization. But do you think that choosing the opposite, that we have a polarization on the other side that's similar, and is that problematic in and of itself?
It can be, and the thing is, I can't choose in that way,
right?
Because we do not enforce our values on people. We practice the ministry of reconciliation, and reconciliation is not making enemies and trying to force people to do what you want them to do when they don't even know or follow Christ. That's unfair, and it's fundamentally, I say, evil.
So kind of on the flip side of that, though, is if we look at Paul's view of the Christian in relation to government, it's almost like he stands back and he says, well, we got this government, and, do what they say to the best you can, but if you have to obey God instead of them, then do that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's not like we have a government that's enforced upon us. We have a government that we, supposedly at least, are voting for and bringing in.
Yeah.
And so the person who would say, well, I want to vote something in that would benefit and forward the Christian morality. So then it's not really the church that's enforcing morality, but the government that begins to enforce a morality that's in line with, we might say, the Mosaic covenant, 10 Commandments, and the versus something that's maybe more hedonistic and far from God. Do you see a value in that? And if so, or if not, what's the problematic dynamic of that, of saying, I want to bring in something that looks more like biblical values?
Uh-huh. Ooh, we just got light.
And then there was light.
There was more light. Not quite enough, but more.
Yeah.
That's better. Well, it's a good question. And what I'm proposing and what I practice is that, and I look at, well, we've heard Romans 13 quoted by congressmen who don't know the Bible at all. We've heard quotes. We've heard the president quote the Bible wrong, and absolutely refuse to say what his favorite verse is or anything about the Bible, because he actually doesn't look at it at all. He doesn't read anything. Of course, he doesn't read the Bible. So. I mean, it's funny that I say that, but yeah, it's true. He doesn't read.
That's true.
So the thing is, he hasn't read the Constitution, but he swore to uphold it. Okay, he's got lawyers for that. But anyway, when it comes down to it, let's look at Romans 13 for a minute. Romans 13, in context, when he talks about the authorities, who's he talking about? Rome.
Right.
The empire. Did the empire hold Christian values? No. But Paul said that okay, thieves and criminals are prosecuted, the peace is kept, and things will move forward in that much is good. But I mean, okay, let's look at some stellar Democrats in the Roman pantheon, like for instance Nero, Claudius. Christian values are nothing to Rome. In fact, Rome considered the Christians so irreligious they called them atheists.
Right.
Because they didn't believe in multiple gods. And they didn't think that who they believed in was God. So there you go.
Right.
The thing is, Paul is just saying, just be at peace with the culture that you're practicing the ministry of reconciliation in. Don't get involved. Don't join the sword fest. But,
right.
But our best way of communicating the things the practices are practicing them.
Right.
And again, as we've talked about before, it's not something we do very well.
Yeah. Now, for the flip side of that, perhaps, is that in our Federalist Republic, which we have to consider the United States to be that, is a variation of a democracy, right?
Yes. Exactly.
So it's a variation on a democracy. And a democracy is something in which all the people have some participation in the development of it.
Or obligation, you might say.
And
really?
Exactly, an obligation to be a part of the ruling.
And that's the other side.
So for the big part of that, though, is our vote.
Uh-huh.
And if our vote can bring us closer to a government that, somebody might say, look at the Old Testament, and God's trying to create a government with the nation of Israel, and he gives them these laws, and there is a moral code. Within the laws, morality is considered part of the legal dynamic. And even today it's like that, because, stealing is still an offense, right?
Of course.
It's still, and that's a moral type of thing. Just take something from your neighbor and make it yours.
You should tell that to the 1%.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was unfair.
You talking about the president? Sorry.
No. He thinks he's a 1%er. We haven't seen his tax returns, and that's probably why.
But so if our vote,
yes, I said that.
And I would have if I did. So if our vote could help us to bring about a government that pursues a moral people, and it kind of goes back to John Adams saying that this kind of government works under nothing but a moral people. And then an immoral people it can't work for. So if we vote for something which models that Christian morality, then are we doing that which is right? And if we pick a party that's in opposition to that morality, are we choosing something that's therefore in opposition to God?
Well, at least from what I can see is you can't call the opposition as against that. They are not against it, but
so you're talking about the Democratic Party,
and the progressives and all the people who are the progressives, which the Democratic Party doesn't want to support, and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
That's another problem. But the thing is that he's right in that this is a participatory government, which is different from what Paul was talking about in Romans 13. It was not a participatory government. If you opposed the government, you ended up taken to Rome, tried before Caesar, that. So and oftentimes everybody who was right turned out to be dead. So we're talking about empire, and we're talking about people on a mission to their local communities. They're not interested. They do good. They don't demand good. They do good, and they vote good if they vote. But these people weren't voting. We are. So that's how do we apply that now is the big question.
Right.
Because a single issue vote is not good for the country.
Right.
And also the idea of you're never going to win the abortion argument in this country because abortion is established. And people do it. And I disagree with it as well. But the thing is, we're never going to win that battle. See, I don't want to lose my right to speak as a Christian, or the opportunity to have any influence and help in anybody's life by getting into an acrimonious, divisive, single issue vote tyranny. I've known it back in the 90s when this was really growing. There were some people where I used to live in Chino, and I talked to one who was running for school board, and she wanted to abolish any semblance of she wanted to bring creationism, 6-day young Earth creationism, and have it be taught, and even favored. And I asked her, then. What if the majority of people that you are representing in your part of the school district disagree with you? He said, well, that's too bad. I'm going to vote my conscience. I said, great, you're a tyrant. You're a tyrant. You're not a representative. You're not representing your district. So why are you running? You're running to basically push your own agenda, and that's what's happening. If in many places, a certain party has actually placed people in that kind of position through gerrymandering and other things. A lot of stuff that's going on to try to push the Christian agenda is built on rank corruption, by gerrymandering districts, by loading the Senate, by doing all this other stuff where you got essentially you're pushing your agenda, but you're building it on a corrupt foundation, and it won't last. Roe v. Wade happened because that was the popular decision, and honestly, you're never going to win that fight. I said it, and it's kind of glib, and maybe not terribly fair, but I said it. If you're a practicing disciple, and you want to make abortion unthinkable, make disciples, or look at the causes and the effects of abortion, and then deal with that. But if you just do it by law, what you're going to have, you're still going to have the causes and the effects, and you're going to have a law that's basically going to drive people underground. It's not going to work. It never has. It's like Prohibition. We did a 30-year massacre over Prohibition. What did it do? Nothing. It didn't stop anything. There were still speakeasies. There were still drinks going. There were whole states that just said, we're not doing that. And honestly, it was overreach.
Right,
Immigrants would come
right.
in, and they had drinking in perspective. They served wine at their dinner tables all the time, and suddenly that's illegal. You go to their countries, you don't see people falling down drunk everywhere. You don't see that. The whole thing is that the issue is overblown, and it's being dealt with badly. And what we do is we forfeit our right to speak about the gospel, about Christ himself, and we don't represent Christ well when we do this. I'm not saying that abortion is right. I don't agree with that at all. But there are some things I don't have a right to say if I'm going to be obedient to Christ.
Okay, so that's on that abortion issue. Just kind of maybe in a quick overview of it. Why was it that Trump became, in your eyes, somebody you'd look at and go, I cannot vote for this guy? Why?
Because he lies. The first thing I got was that he misrepresents just about everything he talks about. And I've been around, I've been politically active since the 60s, the late 60s. I voted for Nixon. I was a Republican. I see this guy basically, he's not a student of the Constitution, nor does he even like it. He thinks it's in his way. He is a crook. He's a well-known crook. And the problem is, you can't reconcile that. You can't make a bad tree does not produce good fruit. And that's a fundamental thing we learn from Jesus himself. A bad tree doesn't produce good fruit. And I could show you how many, we're up to 8,000 lies, individual lies he tells.
Depends on who you look at. Washington Post, I think it has it at almost 16,000.
Really?
Yeah.
It's probably just rephrasing of the same lie. So.
Well, the number of times he's lied, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the number of times he speaks. And that's unfortunate because in my entire life, and I've lived probably longer than a lot of you are watching this, I've never seen anybody like this. There'll be some, even though one would be corrupt, there's still some semblance, and they don't touch the Constitution generally.
Right.
But in the case of in this case of Donald J. Trump, he's fixed courts. He's skirted the law. He's cheated people for years. He doesn't reveal what he's doing. He doesn't tell the truth. He's not trustworthy. And at that point, I have to say, you don't want him representing you as, you don't want to represent for Trump as a believer. That's why I don't. I can't align myself with that.
Right.
And I didn't align myself with Hillary Clinton either.
Right.
Because she had her own thing going on, and honestly, it stands in the way. There's certain things I won't speak about in conversation with people. I'll keep it to myself because when I'm talking to somebody who doesn't have a frame of reference like me, but I'm still practicing the ministry of reconciliation, I don't want to get into those arguments.
Right.
I will respectfully disagree.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that. We're going whole hog. We're calling him God's provision for the United States. I'm going, I thought God loved us. Sorry.
Okay, so that's here's a podcast with a Christian non-Trump supporter, somebody who voted for Hillary, and so
just some nobody. Don't listen to him.
Yeah, this is Jim Hogue telling us his stuff about why he couldn't vote for Trump. And so anyway, Wild Theology Podcast on Trump supporters, Hillary supporters, and all the in-betweens. What do you have to say about that? Look at you. Show them your Gandalf-y pipe here.
That's how you finish a cigar when it gets too close.
Yeah,
too low.
That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to my patrons who help make these missional travels and these podcasts possible. Without you, I couldn't do it. God bless. If you'd like to support this project, you can do so here on Patreon for as little as $1 a release. And at the most, that's $4 a month.
Why on earth would anybody want to support us?
Well, I think we're pretty cool, and maybe some people believe in what we're doing.
Oh, come on, you believe that?
Yeah.
Don't you ever think they're just a little too weird for the average person?
Yeah, sometimes.